Thank you, Bill, for coming today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm glad to have you. I just want to say I've known you for a while now, so this is going to be, I'm actually really excited for you to be here. From a standpoint, you have a really interesting career. You worked for law firms, you worked for a state as a CIO, you worked at eDiscovery providers and as a consultant. So you work with all different types of clients around the country and the world. And I just want to ask you to start out for all our people watching this through whatever medium to understand like how you got into legal technology, and then we'll go through some other questions. But I want to hear how you started and kind of your story.
Actually, I went to law school at University of Michigan, and when I got out, I practiced law for maybe a couple of years. But then I went to West Publishing, which is now part of the Thomson Reuters
Right.
empire, and basically the job there was as a product manager to develop what they called floppy disks. So we have an online product inside Westlaw. We have CD-ROM products, but we didn't have anything for floppy disks. And so I ended up actually at West Publishing developing a line of floppy disks. But it was basically, I learned product management within the legal technology space.
Okay.
And then got a job at Dorsey and Whitney, which is right there in Minneapolis, and I got a job as CIO. And I'd have to say all of my legal CIO jobs involved more than IT. They sort of took everything that they thought would benefit from having a technical angle, and kind of shoved it into the jobs. So I managed the library and litigation support, et cetera. So that's how it began, my interest in legal technology. But I would say eDiscovery is a different animal.
Sure.
And the eDiscovery element came along. Oh, what was that? The dates are hard for me. But basically right around year 2000, I think there was a big move towards the eDiscovery. It was something I had to support from the CIO role. And so I got to know it well. And then he made the transition to eDiscovery positions, mainly because what would I say? It's basically closer to the case teams. Mm-hmm. It's revenue generating, and IT is hard,
Right.
So.
Do you find that more interesting, the true eDiscovery versus the legal IT?
I do, yeah. I mean, it's just the legal IT in some sense kind of commoditized at a certain point. Everybody's doing this, same things. I have to say there was there's always been these kind of points at which there's an expansion of the products that you're using in technology. So back in the middle, I'd say 1996, actually, we were struggling with the advent of internet email, which turned out to be a huge thing. We deal with email all the time today in cases. And so that was one kind of element. And then crossed, and after we got done with Y2K, everybody's dealing with Y2K, which is not legal technology. That's really when eDiscovery started, really, it got developed. Because that was the point. How would I put it? Basically at that point there was a significant volume of relevant case documents, and so that was all turning to electronic, and we had to deal with that. And then there's a whole story about all that. Somewhere in there, I ended up at the state of Wisconsin, and my job was to come up with strategy and policies for web enabling the state government enterprise.
Okay.
And so that was, yet another one of those things. Sure. And then predictive coding and then AI today is kind of how what would you call those, the big
transition.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting with legal technology. It's always legal adopting some other industry's technology. Mm-hmm. And we see that today, from email to predictive coding to analytics and now AI, right? It really is a journey of adopting other people's technology for the legal space.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it takes a while. I mean, you get a lot of feedback from people about how slow lawyers are to adopt technology, et cetera. But that's because it's a high risk, highly intelligent enterprise, and you got to be very, very careful about how you roll that stuff out,
Right. And there's a lot of deadlines. I always explain working inside a law firm, my many different law firm jobs over the years, is like being in the emergency room of a hospital. Anything that's difficult or interesting is going to make it to that eDiscovery team or that legal operations team, right, in a corporation, right?
Yep. Yeah, well, I mean, one of the interesting things about eDiscovery is the stories, the different stories that you've got. I mean, inside of all these cases. So I have, I can still tell this one. I think we had a client once, and they basically produced lawn care products, but they wanted something for the winter product line, so they bought up a a product line that had to do with bird food and bird food. And what happened, long story short, they had been accidentally putting in some kind of a product, amendment that kills birds. But nobody knew this because the birds would die. They'd fly away. They'd eat the food, fly away, and die and live somewhere. You're like going, it's the perfect crime,
Sure.
Yeah, it's really a sad thing, but yeah, basically it was killing birds.
Right.
And you wouldn't know it. Had no feedback loop on that.
Sure.
So those kind of stories, you get them all the time in eDiscovery. You try not to say the names of the companies or the lawyers, but it was fun.
Yeah.
You may have to edit that out. I don't know.
Yeah. From a standpoint, now you're doing a lot more consulting with corporations and law firms, coming on as an expert to help them out. Can you explain a little bit, briefly, like some of the stuff you're doing? Because I always find it interesting when we talk about what you're taking on next.
Yeah, I mean, I started out as a consultant, but like you mentioned, I've done the consulting thing. I've been on the vendor side, been on the government side, did a huge project for the FTC and another one for FDIC. So kind of involved in all phases of this, of eDiscovery. So now basically a sole proprietor.
Sure.
So there's a fun story behind that, how I got to be there. But basically I work on a lot of time on large cybersecurity cases, which have a huge eDiscovery component.
Sure.
And you're dealing with complex systems and a lot of data and a lot of structured data, which is very different from kind of your typical eDiscovery case. Yeah. And so I'm doing a lot of that. I've done a lot of predictive coding projects where either I'm on the defense side, defending a protocol and the process, or I've also done them on the plaintiff side where you're basically attacking or at least prodding the defense to prove that all the documents are coming right. It was kind of funny because the plaintiff side of those things, they don't really care about you being efficient. They want all your documents. Then they'll run their own keyword searches across them. So that whole idea,
or analytics, right? Now probably AI as well.
AI, I think, it's going to have this. It should have the same life cycle. What I don't know really is what happened to all those challenges to predictive coding, because they sort of dropped off at a certain point. And I think it's because it was too hard and they were too expensive to argue about it. But it was enough of a black box there that the lawyers aren't comfortable with black boxes. They would rather do keyword searches and something really transparent. I understand keywords, even if they're not as good as predictive coding. And so AI is going to be the same way, I think, where initially people are going to have to challenge, did you run it right? Am I getting all the documents that I deserved? But that's kind of the interesting stuff. Cybersecurity, predictive coding, AI are kind of the cutting edge,
Sure. Well, let's pivot for a second and talk about AI directly. I mean, here at Ilticon, there's either security or AI is being talked about at seemingly all the sessions.
It's a buzzword you got to have there, and
for sure. But I also think it's a reality. Again, I see with AI in the legal space being adopted by legal because of their clients. Mm-hmm. Their clients want that. We just had a luncheon session with a bunch of our clients, and one of our corporate clients told all the other corporations and law firms there that we require to know how they're going to use AI to save us time and money, right? And I think there's a great story there, because the one thing about eDiscovery is it's deadline driven. I think the hidden thing, talking about cost and time and things like that, is your ability to pivot. Mm-hmm. So this is one thing that we're helping clients talk about, explain it to them, but also put that into action, right? Our review team. So from your point of view, what do you see as the next step? You've seen so many transitions, right? From, people doing legal research by the book, then online, then people, adopting email, analytics. What do you see the adoption in the next 6 months, the next couple of years for AI?
Well, I think those are good examples, because when you look back, there were all these transition points, and they're all messy to begin with. And one of the things I learned out of that is not to kind of roll your own. There's no good reason really for if a law firm in the process of their innovation committee or whatever, if they come across truly unique things to legal practice, where AI can actually solve a problem for them, then they may want to roll their own. It's a competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, what I encourage people to do is to just follow the vendors. The vendors are going to be more aggressive about incorporating AI into whatever existing technologies a law firm uses today. They're going to be driving innovation there and just finding that out, testing to see if it's stable, if it's effective, and I think that's kind of thing where just follow the vendors. And,
Right.
and it seems kind of odd, but I, sense that's somewhat what you're talking about as well, is that these technologies are coming out, they're all over the place. What's hard is knowing which ones are effective, which ones are good, and which ones are just crap.
Right.
And I think one of the problems is we're going to see a lot of pressure from the corporate side to use AI. And I think that's one of the things you're saying. And I agree with that 100% because they need to drive down costs. They don't have resources to, to do things the traditional way all the time. So they're going to want you to use it. And the question will be, and this is where the challenges will come in, just like predictive coding, I think you're going to get a lot of AI utilizations and implementations that are going to be challenged by whoever's on the opposing side. And we'll go through that cycle. But I think it'll be faster now because somehow defendants and plaintiffs are just accepting the black box, that it's somehow sound, because everybody's using it. And they'll get to that point and maybe never understand the black box part of it,
Yeah. So, Bill, I want to get your sense of how you think this is going to AI adoption is going to affect staffing, for a case team in eDiscovery.
Yeah, I think it definitely the people who manage the tool and the process, which like the senior project managers, usually it's not the director, et cetera. But senior project managers are going to definitely, it's a new opportunity for them that I kind of think of it as many tens of thousands of dollars worth more for that person than not. Also, when you think about it too, though, it's also the attorneys, right? Today, even in just standard eDiscovery, what happens is that a senior associate, basically gets caught on a big eDiscovery project for 5 years. And that becomes their future and it becomes their title,
Right.
But I think the more they can master AI, which is a different skill set for them, the attorneys that can do that can really find themselves, running the whole show, not in eDiscovery, at their law firms. What happens at the lower end, there's certain things that we've talked a little bit, for example, about, a law firm billing, for example,
Right.
being a place where it's a high risk issue to get those billings right, even though it seems easy. And AI has got a purpose there, just to like point out, hey, these may be problems on the bill. And then the billing attorney's secretary here, what do they call them nowadays? Executive assistant. Yeah. They would, they'd be handling those kind of issues. So it kind of, I think it enhances a lot of, especially the staff issues. But you come back to eDiscovery per se, there is a lower end where there's still going to be people collecting, right? Forensic collections, et cetera. Preservation, big deal. I have a lot to say about that. And then also when you kind of think of the processing folks, all pretty much going to be the same thing. With relativity RAR, there used to be a special indexing step, which actually you had to do it right, that kind of thing. So it just raises the complexity of all the jobs, and I think probably is good for most of them from an income standpoint.
Right.
It's 10 to 20 years before it's so embedded that it's actually performing legal functions and doing research for, et cetera.
Right. I really think, we've talked about this with some of our clients where right now is really the point where you still need the experts to help you use the AI to do your reviews.
Yep.
That's what our team specializes in.
And that's all the project managers, right? And,
where they're actually attorneys, they're review managers, right? Also, there's the technical people and the review managers. And really, when I talk to partners and associate general counsel about using AI, it really makes their best people better, right? And empowers them. That's what we like to say. It's going to empower your best people to do more work and take their expertise and expand upon that and model that out over the whole project. We've talked before about this idea of like creating a model for practice groups for a specific issue or a case or a reoccurring type of practice they do. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the old knowledge management issue. You want to make sure that every lawyer in the enterprise is using the best available materials, forms, documents, whatever. But in the especially in the litigation space, knowledge management never really seemed to take hold. But what we're talking about in this case, and we've probably been talking about it for 10 years, is the notion of using AI to basically build, I'm going to call them seed sets, but the bottom line is to learn from these dedicated populations. I mean, you take a employment practice group that's been, got millions of cases, documents housed in the firm, and the notion is you can help that firm basically build intelligence off of the employment documents of this type and of that type and of that type, so that the next time they get a case that's similar to one of these seed sets, I'll call them, is something you can basically start right out with a much more intelligent analysis of the documents in that litigation than if you're just kind of starting from scratch with just John Doe CFO's email.
Right.
Get more intelligent, pursuit there. And just going back to one of the points I was making earlier, just to kind of close the loop there, I do think that really AI is going to require on the technical side with the project management team, also with the review attorneys, but also that with the attorneys, there's a whole lot of education, just like we've had with eDiscovery per se. It's now been 25 years. And I'd say to the point where, there are associates and senior associates and junior partners who sort of, once they kind of got steered off into eDiscovery, they became the expert, and then that becomes sort of a career for some of them. It's same thing is going to happen with AI, and maybe some of the people on the innovation committee, maybe people from various departments, just getting the right people in the right use cases. That's the problem. But I do think that it's to the extent any group starts expanding its skill sets in AI, they're going to do better. You're not going to be fired or something like that. There might be it's been tough on the executive assistants, not AI, but just the eDiscovery. They have been less and less involved. Automations, kind of automated things. I think the big unknown is paralegals. Is to what extent do they capture some portion of the tasks to be done, and to what extent do they develop? But I do think that there's room for the smart ones to develop. And then the question is, does some of that get automated? I don't know, maybe.
One of the areas I think there's a huge opportunity for is helping. AI can help with privilege logs, the privilege process. And it's really a different animal than what people think. It's not going to replace attorneys, but I think it's a huge lever and tool to really go from having people manually review the documents, some QC, and then go through, and then someone goes through the privilege log time and time and time again. So this is a really big area that our team is working on, and we're going to be getting another competency from Rel 1 to be one of the first eDiscovery providers to have that.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your thought about the privilege using AI as a tool, not to do it all, but I tell people, think about it as a way to get a very good draft of your privilege log, and you can do the same type of sampling in QC you do with a linear review, but you can do that initial privilege review 10 times faster, if not faster.
Yeah, with all the cost in eDiscovery, and I'd say one of my concerns is that just from a long haul, the costs of eDiscovery are just still kind of out of hand, really, when you figure out what we're trying to do. And we know that 70% of the cost of eDiscovery is the review component. Mm-hmm. And within the review component, the priv is probably the most expensive. And, it's not the largest number of documents, but it's the degree of eyeballs on those documents is a huge issue. And so I do think, that is one place where, and it's also, on the privilege thing, it's a risk issue too. It's not just a cost issue. You got to get it right. And just being able to use AI to basically help you develop the priv log, a draft priv log with all of the reasons why you're classifying something as priv,
right?
And quite frankly, and which we were talking about earlier, also building out your utilization of the priv algorithm, let's say, should get smarter over time, so that based on your firm and your attorney's decisions, you're able to run a good draft priv log. You're still probably going to want to do some of those priv logs by category, and you get into some of those things, but they're all going to be smarter because of what the AI brings to the table, and it's one of those things where they'll be very cautious to, you'll have a lot of discussions, I think, about how that thing works and can we rely on it. They shouldn't rely on it, but they can really use it to prompt, decisions on the priv log. So I think that's good.
I really try to express to clients that you're relying on the same way you're relying upon these contracted attorneys that you don't know. Yeah. Right. What this brings is, faster, less expensive, and more consistent way of doing what contractors used to hate to do for you. Right. So it's really a benefit to you and your client that you can compress that time, have more consistency. And it's interesting too, in Rel 1, that privilege, error for privilege, gives you a reason for each document.
Right.
Right. Yeah, so 3 weeks when someone asks why, you can go back and look. Think about going back to a contractor 3 weeks later and ask them, let me re-review the documents for you.
Right, exactly.
Let's start the clock. Yep. Right. So anyways, Bill, I really appreciate your time today being here. I know it was a cloudy day here in DC at ILTACon, and now the sun's out. So, but hopefully you have a great day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.